Okay, we had the new parts come through from the factory. We'll get them on the car ahead of FP1.
Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to the episode of my F1 2018 career mode, episode number 70 today for the Canadian Grand Prix in Season 4. If you guys did miss the previous one at the MONACO Grand Prix, then be sure to go check that one out before you see this one. But head into this episode then at Montreal with two minor upgrades on the car. We continue the trajectory of upgrades we had at the MONACO Grand Prix. There you can see Red Bull plateau somewhat there after their major and ultimate upgrades at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, I think it was. They've kind of slowed down in the development rate, you can see, and now they've plateaued completely, and we're continuing to catch them up, and we kind of need to, because at the end of last episode, obviously I talked a lot about where I felt like actually the car is not really there. It's not championship material quite yet, and I think the races like China kind of mask the issues the car has with tyre wear, general race pace, and it seems like our car is actually faster in qualifying than it is in the race, which is kind of weird, because a lot of the time in seasons 1 to 3, it was the other way around. So we're going to have to work on the car still. We did obviously chassis improvements to tyre wear and the weight reduction, so hopefully those can come into play here around Montreal, but I'm still cautious about this, and I just want a cleaner race so that hopefully it doesn't have any incidents like we had at Spain and Monaco, and hopefully we don't get any bad luck, because pretty much we've been on a very much almost like a real life kind of bad luck streak like Ferrari sometimes have in real life F1 in the last 2 episodes, so hopefully that's not the case. You saw there briefly we changed some engine components. Obviously no worries about, you know, worn out parts that we have to get a penalty for at this stage of the season. Just the internal combustion engine was a little bit more worn than I was expecting it to be, and also the turbocharger as well, so that might come back to bite us later in the season, but for now we're fine obviously, and so we'll head into Q1, no issues there with the kind of more fresh power unit than we had at Monaco, and we'll need it for the back straight of course, but we have issues straight away at the very start of Q1. You can see there on the right hand side on the heads-up display, the DRS has failed and is stuck open, because I had it open obviously on the main straight, and that's when it failed. So a very odd situation of having the DRS stuck open for the entire lap into this next chicane. You can see how much lack of turn in grip I have, and you can actually feel how floaty and unresponsive the car is on the rear end, because it just loses all sense of downforce of course as it cuts the drag in a straight line, but also cuts the downforce in the corners. And so on the straights it was actually quite nice. I could feel the instant, you know, faster acceleration out of corners, but obviously you saw there briefly every single time I turned in and turned out there was no grip, so I had to come back in to repair it of course, and so we're gonna have to wait a little bit. It doesn't take long actually, it only takes 1 minute to wait in the garage for it to be done over, but that's the first time I've had a DRS failure since the very first episode of this career mode. Remember, episode number 1 in the Haas of this entire series, I had a DRS failure on my very first lap of free practice. So I said all the way back then, I hope that's not a sign for things to come for the entirety of the series. Thankfully it hasn't. You know, we haven't had many failures like that, but we actually do get a second failure here. So I jokingly talk about that. We do get 2 failures here of the DRS. I go for another lap and the DRS fails again and gets stuck open a second time, despite my engineers fixing it, or apparently fixing it the first time. So this time around I thought, you know what, screw it. I'm going to try 1 lap with the DRS open and I'll see what the lap time's like, because I might gain some time, you know, on every single straight. But in the corners you can see I do not have any turn in. Like the front end just doesn't want to bite in with the rear end stepping out every time, and so it's a horrendous lap time. P17 there. We do beat Ocon for now there, and we're in P18. Thankfully though, finally on the 3rd flying lap in Q1 I do have the DRS fixed and we can go again. So I used 1 set of Hypersoft tyres for both those DRS broken runs, and for this second run in Q1 I've used a new set of Hypersoft. So unfortunately, hopefully we are making it into Q3 eventually. I'll only have 1 set to burn in Q3, and also for Q2 I only have 1 set to make sure I get into the top 10 shootout. So that might be a tiny bit of a worry, but I do come back strong and get up into P5 eventually at the end of Q1. So after all that debacle and kind of faffering around with the DRS being broken twice, thankfully I can make it through. But at one point there, when it broke a second time, I was genuinely worried, like, okay, I think we're screwed here. I think that if the DRS is going to break again for a 3rd time unlucky rather, I'm going to be out of Q1 then. I'm going to be at the back of the grid. And I was thinking the worst thing, obviously we can overtake at Canada, but it's still not ideal. And especially like what I just said with having, you know, a turn of luck from Spain and Monaco, it would not be the case. We would have, again, continued bad luck here at Canada. So I was really dreading it, but thankfully we do make it in, so no dramas there. And so in Q2, obviously trying to do the best job we can. We only have 1 set of tyres to really use in this session. We get a bit of a tow and a help from Lewis Hamilton on the back straight, just a tad, not going to be too much, but you know, I'll take anything really at this point as we swing through the last chicane and then towards the line, and hopefully this will be enough, and at the end of it, it will be enough to get us through there. A little bit closer than I wanted it to, but albeit we're still in. Raikkonen, the fastest guy in the session, actually, so the car seems to have some decent pace, but the difference is going to be now, heading into Q3, it's going to be intermediate conditions. You saw it got darker in Q2, and that's because the clouds are forming, and it starts to rain in this top 10 shootout here. So throughout the entire form book of Q1 and Q2, nothing matters now. It's all about Q3. It's a separate session, different conditions, and you know, in the rain, some cars react better, and so I don't know yet how this car reacts because I've not driven the Ferrari in the wet, really. We fill up the car with a bit more fuel like we've done before on these intermediate kind of sessions where I can go and do 2 or 3 consecutive lap times there and try and improve. So the first one here is just trying to suss out the grip levels. Obviously, like I said, it's not only the first time I've driven the Ferrari in the wet, it's been a long time since I've had a wet session really on the F1 game, so having to get back into it and kind of used to it. And you can see I'm making a mistake actually into the chicane, so that's exactly why we need more fuel and just consecutive runs, so I can kind of get dialed into what I need to be braking, you know, how late can I leave it. And so the second run is much better. You can see a lot of improvement on the top right. Still a little bit shaky here and there on the rear end there with the throttle pedal. The Ferrari was very understeer, I gotta say, in the wet. So again, the car really isn't truly where I want it to be, that I think we can really make a challenge for the title. But obviously we've got plenty of upgrades to make, and we've got a lot of improvements that we can go with on the R&D tree. But we get across the line for P4, and eventually it'll pop down to P6, Raikkonen P3 then. So overall the position is a little bit down than I thought it would be, but at the same time, time-wise, I only lost a couple of tenths to Raikkonen, so I'm not too disheartened by that. Hockenheim gets a very surprising pole position considering Carlos Sainz, his teammates behind me in P7 there. So Hockenheim pulls it out of the bag, so that's pretty great for him. You got the Red Bull of Verstappen in second place. Last race winners, Ricciardo is just ahead of me in P5, so the Red Bull's looking pretty strong, and Alonso right up there as well. So I think it's going to be a tough race. Of course, overtaking is a lot easier for both the player and the AI with the slipstream power around Montreal, so I'm expecting a big old fight. So let's go into the race though. You know, we've had a top 10 shootout that's had rain, so you kind of throw the form book out, and then you go back into the race, which will be dry, I think, and then we just don't know how the car's going to perform on heavy fuel, so it'll be interesting. So let's get into the intro then and go to the race.
We're back once again beside the St. Lawrence River here in Montreal for the Canadian Grand Prix. The event first moved to a variant of this track back in 1978. It was won by none other than Gilles Villeneuve, the first Canadian to ever win his home race, and in whose honour the circuit would be renamed. It's one of the fastest races of the season here at the circuit Gilles Villeneuve, with around 60% of this 2.7-mile circuit taken at full throttle. There are 14 corners to navigate, the very last of which has its very own infamous history. It could be the cause of a safety car today. A warm welcome to Anthony Davidson, who's beside me in the commentary box today. Let's talk about the engineer. What do you make of their performance so far this season?
They've been avoiding mistakes and have had solid pace, so it's been a good season so far, but whether they can keep that up long term remains to be seen.
So before the off, let's remind ourselves of yesterday's qualifying session with a look at the starting grid. Great work from Nico Hülkenberg yesterday sees him start on pole, edging out Max Verstappen, who'll start from P2. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Raikkonen, Alonso, Daniel Ricciardo, the engineer, Sainz, Leclerc, Hamilton, and Stoffel Van Dorn, Grosjean, Gasly, Brendan Hartley, and Magnussen, Bottas, Perez, Esteban Ocon, and Marcus Ericsson. Stroll and Sergei Sirotkin rounds off the grid. And with preparations almost complete, let's head down to the track.
Thankfully for the entire top 10 to keep a fair fight, no one got a penalty for the grid, so we all line up in the way we qualified in Q3. But like I said, very different conditions now. So we had inters the last time we were in this car on this track, and now we are back on the Hypersoft tyres we qualified on in Q2 with a 2-stop today, of course, Hypers to 2 sets of Ultras. Obviously, though, just like Monaco, the 1-stop is possible for those outside the top 10. I believe maybe Ricciardo again has managed to get through into the top 10 on the medium compounder tyres, so he might be at a big advantage, like like he was last race to maybe go for the race victory. We'll have to see, but here we go. We're going to get into it now to 5 red lights suit the Canadian Grand Prix. 35 laps around Montreal. Let's make it a better one than we had the last 2 rounds, and we're underway. It's a good start there versus Alonso and Ricciardo, but we're boxed in behind the Spaniard there. Double lock up briefly into turn 1. Don't want to hit the back of that McLaren, but Ricciardo tries to size up a move on Alonso on the left-hand side, and to be fair, it looks like it's the traction for it, but Alonso just cuts across him there, and so we remain in P6 in sort of orderly fashion, apart from the top end. You can see there briefly maybe, and also in the mini-map clearly, Verstappen now is the one that leads the Canadian Grand Prix. Hulkenberg immediately from pole position has gone down to 2nd place, unfortunately for us, and I guess the championship fight, because again it looks like Red Bull very much have the pace advantage here, or at least one of them does, because Ricciardo's stuck in a bit of traffic, and so we have the slipstream advantage. So the Red Bull, like real life, might be really good in the corners and the chassis wise, but in a straight line we still have an advantage there, and so into the chicane we just managed to slow the thing down there, got very close to cutting the corner and the curbing on the inside there. And now the Renault of Sainz will try and actually make a move on the outside of Ricciardo. He might just do it there, you know, and so Ricciardo on the back foot. Of course, remember though, like I said, Ricciardo is on ultra soft tyres. All of us are on hypers in the top 10 here, so that might be a reason why Ricciardo's slow right now compared to Verstappen and the rest of us. And like Monaco, he just needs to sit and be patient, and eventually he'll be in a really good position with clean air to take the lead of the Grand Prix. But we've got yellow flags up ahead, and oh my god, there's been contact between Hulkenberg and Raikkonen, and Raikkonen's out of the Canadian Grand Prix. 18 runners remaining, so I believe Hulkenberg is also out, and the reason was, I think Hulkenberg got an engine failure or a mechanical failure, slowed down at the wrong point of the circuit where Raikkonen just slammed into the back of him and lost his tyre. So once again, the second time in the last 3 episodes, Raikkonen's left without one front tyre off his car, and he's out of the Grand Prix this time though, very early on in lap 2. So that is really unfortunate once again for Ferrari. The bad luck for Ferrari just keeps on rolling in. If it's not for me, it's for Kimi, it seems like, or both of us in the case of Spain. And so we're up into P3 though, so at least that's the only good part, is 2 people went out in the Grand Prix in front of us, so we immediately inherit the podium position. Alonso P2, but Carlos Sainz now fighting us very hard there, and so the Renault, obviously it was a car that got on pole position in the wet, so it clearly has some sort of pace, and Sainz has enough pace to go right around the outside of me in the hairpin and get me, and we're going to try maybe get him back in a straight line if we can, but Ricciardo is also sniffing around. Can we have a move on the outside potentially? I don't think we're actually alongside enough for Sainz to give us the room on the inside for the next part of the chicane. He is just going to squeeze us out completely, and so we have to remain in P4, and Ricciardo is now right on my back there. You've also got the Sauber of Leclerc sniffing around, doing really well at the moment in this Grand Prix. He's in, what is right now P6, but it could be P5 or P4. You never know if Ricciardo and me battle on for too long. We're side by side now through turns 1 and 2 to turn 3 now. The chicane, we're going to brake early, and Ricciardo goes deep, and we do a beautiful little switchback move there and absolutely have him for chips, and we're back up into P3, and Leclerc can maybe now pressurize him as he loses a lot of time going that deep into that chicane, and we can try and chase after Carlos Sainz, but at the moment then it is Verstappen that leads the way from Carlos Sainz. It's going to be Leclerc does pressurize Ricciardo. Look at that, Ricciardo goes defensive. Leclerc's had a great entry and exit on the last chicane there, as well as Van Dorn might be sniffing around. So into turn 1, will Leclerc pull out to the inside? Yes, he will. Meanwhile, also Toro Rosso tries to overtake Mercedes in the background as well, so they're 2 by 2 there. Leclerc on the inside, can he squeeze out Ricciardo? Will Ricciardo have too much grip for him at this stage? Maybe the Hypersofts on the Sauber is going to make the car faster, but Ricciardo's going to come back, and they go side by side again in the chicane, and Ricciardo's going to squeeze him out into the wall and maintain that position. But Leclerc, a really good job there, but a big train forming now. Ricciardo, Leclerc, Van Dorn, you've got the Toro Rosso, Pierre Gasly, I believe, overhead one of the Mercedes cars. So we now come in on lap 7 at the same time as Carlos Sainz. At this stage, Alonso had already come in about 2 laps earlier. I think he came on lap 5, so he tried to get a major undercut to maybe try and chase after Verstappen, but instead I think he's hit some traffic, Alonso. So with Sainz's pace and my pace as well, we might be a lot closer to Alonso than we were before the pit stops. I think Alonso's undercut has kind of backfired on him potentially, because there he goes on the right hand side there. You might have seen the flash of orange as we go back onto our POV. There is Alonso's car, and you can see on the minimap the yellow dot, if you look closely on the left hand side of the video, Sainz is well ahead of Alonso. Sainz has now jumped Alonso effectively with a major overcut of 2 laps, and I'm a lot closer to Alonso than I was before. before. So it's really backfired for Alonso because he's been hitting this kind of traffic right here with Sainz also now stuck in down the inside of Esteban Ocon there. But now can we try and overtake Alonso potentially as he's being stuck here? For some reason is struggling to get past the Force India car as the Force India actually goes side by side still with Carlos Sainz, and we're going to take it nice and easy into the last chicane and really just take this patiently and wait for our chance to make a move on Alonso. That might just be now with DRS, but Alonso gets a good exit and he's going to slipstream Ocon at the same time. But like Monaco, we have a lot of room to play around with here at Montreal, and so into turn one we're going to make a dive on Alonso as he gets stuck behind Ocon there. Our tyres almost robbing on the front right to the front left to him, and once again in this Season 4 I battle my former Season 3 teammate Fernando Alonso in that McLaren v Ferrari here. We're still there, he's on the inside, but eventually he has to give that place up, and we're up into P11. And again, like Ricciardo did when I fought him into that chicane, he loses a lot of time backing off there, and so him and Ricciardo are both going to hit some traffic behind with that Sauber there behind them. But ahead of us we've got another Sauber, I believe, in this train of Ericsson, I think it is, who's really holding up Perez, Sainz and Ocon here. You can see I literally, I think, bumped Ocon's rear tyre as Sainz is now finding it an issue to get past Sergio Perez, but he has actually done that now. We're going to shoot one down the inside in the same place we did Alonso to Ocon. It's a near identical move, like literally we rubbed tyres again on the front right there on the sidewall, and we made the pass, and then on the very next lap into the chicane make a nice diving move on the outside. Waste no time here in this Grand Prix getting these moves done. Sainz can be past Valtteri Bottas, this is on the outside, so the Mercedes car, at least with the Finn, is struggling a little bit, whereas his teammate did a great job yesterday of getting into Q3, whereas he did not anyway. You know, irrespective of the pace of the Mercedes car, Hamilton's been outperforming that Merc so far this season, getting into Q3 sessions. But now we're going to try and overtake him then with DRS round the outside. Big old dive there, great brakes on, and look at that. The downforce and grip we had versus the Mercedes car is unrivaled there. Different universes, so we might not have the pace against the Renault Works team or the Red Bull this stage of the season so far, but at least I do have it over the Mercedes car. But meanwhile now, an update on the race order then. It's actually Pierre Gasly that leads the way, the Canadian Grand Prix. He's on a one stop, so he's not pit yet. Verstappen has pit once. He's in second place. Third place is Brendan Hartley. Then you got the two Haas cars of Magnussen and Grosjean respectively, followed then by Carlos Sainz and myself. So obviously in that order, Sainz, me and Verstappen are the only guys who've done two stops. Both Haas cars and both Toro Rossos are trying a one stop in this Grand Prix, it would appear like. And so just like the Monaco Grand Prix, the Toro Rossos might be able to really gain quite a fair bit. Of course, in the end, they didn't really capitalise and get a podium, but for a lot of the Monaco Grand Prix, Gasly and Hartley were right up there at Monaco. And on lap 16 here, you can clearly see Gasly came out right behind us after his one and only pit stop of the Grand Prix. He's on super soft to the end of this race, so he's in a very good position to get a top 5, basically, because we're all going to pit, me, Sainz and Verstappen, and it's just going to be the rest of the guys left out on one stop. So we come in probably a little bit earlier than we're expecting, probably maybe 2-3 laps earlier, really, but I want to try and get an undercut on Carlos Sainz if I can and try and jump him here. So another set of ultra soft tyres. I believe Sainz might try the super soft instead, because generally I remember from last season as well, the AI seemed to just go for a more conservative strategy. So we're going to play a bit of a gamble because I've gone 2 laps earlier on my pit stop and I'm on the softer compounded tyre compared to the super soft. So this is going to be a gamble of being faster right now and maybe being slower at the end of this stint, but I want to try and jump Sainz if we can, and then we'll go from there basically. And by the time we move on to lap 21, we set the fast lap of the Grand Prix, and we are going to jump Carlos Sainz as well as Daniel Ricciardo. Ricciardo's jumped Sainz, and so I can only assume Sainz got hit with some traffic potentially on his next 2 laps before he came in for a pit stop, because on the minimap there he was behind Ricciardo. So looking at the race order then, Verstappen still very much in a dominant race lead, then followed by the 2 Toro Rossos who are nose to tail for P2 and P3, both on super soft tyres, both on one stops, because both of them did not make it into Q3. So a big blessing in disguise for Toro Rosso and both Haas cars, because Magnussen and Grosjean there are 2x2 in P4 and 5. So it's very much Noah's Ark there in the top flight from P2 to P5, and all 2 of those teams benefited massively from not actually getting into Q3, which is highly frustrating in a way, but you know, that's the way the F1 rules work. You can start on the free tyre in Q2, but that's why also a big reason why in real life Formula 1 they're kind of calling for that rule to kind of be disbanded a little bit, because sometimes it really doesn't make sense in this kind of example. Behind me then in P6 is Daniel Ricciardo, then you got Carlos Sainz trying to catch back up, and then you got the Sauber just fighting ahead of the Mercedes car. I say P6, actually, we're in P7 technically, because Ericsson's yet to come in for his pit stop. Eventually will be P6, because we'll not only overtake him, but he'll be coming in for a pit stop, I imagine, pretty damn soon anyway, as he's on the set of ultra soft tyres. So here we go now with DRS down the inside of the Swede. It's a nice move there, and now we're up into P6, and now we've got a lot of clean air between myself and Grosjean, and now the task at hand is pretty much trying to catch up to P2 if we can, because that's the plan. Usually on a 2-stop, you try and catch and overtake all the 1-stoppers, but today, unfortunately though, I think maybe not Grosjean, but Magnussen and the 2 Toro Rossos have a lot of pace. Like, the gap from Grosjean to Magnussen is quite huge, and there's a bigger gap to the Toro Rossos. So I don't even know if the podium is even viable. I think we'll only be fighting for this P5 position, and that's not even much of a fight because we sail past Grosjean then, and you can see the minimap then, we've got a huge gap to Magnussen, and we've only got 10 laps left in this Grand Prix, or 9 when we go across the line. So it's going to be a very tall order to actually get up into even P4 in this race. And on the next lap, Romain Grosjean suffers an engine failure, so there might be a reason why I caught Grosjean very easily. Maybe his car was anticipating the failure inbound, because clearly Magnussen has a bit more pace than his teammate to stay ahead of me. And on the next closing stage of the Grand Prix, instead of actually trying to catch Magnussen, I'm looking behind me because Ricciardo now is picking up pace. My all-soft tyres are wearing out compared to the super softs, and now the supers are probably the faster combiner tyre. This stage of the stint, we just about managed to defend Ricciardo there, but then you can see on the right-hand side there, I just got my right-hand side tyre on the rear end on the grass and the curbing, and that slipped my car to the left-hand side of the circuit. It didn't help my acceleration, and so Ricciardo managed to out-traction me into the hairpin then, and he's got the move done. Can we try and come back at him in a straight line? Hopefully we can do, obviously. Red Bull, Renault power v Ferrari, and so overtake mode on ERS, but you can see on the right-hand side on fuel, I'm very critical. We're going to go into Rich Mix anyway and try and get the move done before worrying about fuel, but Ricciardo has a very good defensive move there into the chicane. Really does great. We're going to try the second pop there, but Ricciardo has DRS for a second bite of the cherry, because there's no two activation points for the Canadian Grand Prix. There's only 1 detection point and 2 activation spots, so Ricciardo keeps DRS and he's able to defend from me in turns 1 and 2, and so I'm back down to P6 then, and right behind me is Carlos Sainz, and with 3 laps to go in this race, I don't have too much ERS left to deploy, although I'm still in hot lap mode, and I don't have enough fuel to burn at the moment. I'm in lean mixture. We're going to go back up into standard and also bump it up into overtake mode to try and get some straight line speed, but even with DRS, look how fast the Renault now is in a straight line. Down the inside he goes, and a big dive bomb there for Carlos Sainz with the tyre grip clearly in the brake zone, and he waltzes past me for P6, and so now I'm down to P7, and so it really has turned in from what was going to be an okay result, I guess. You know, still disappointed not to get Magnussen and the 2 Toro Rossos. We've now been pushed way down the order, and once again I'm left saying, clearly you can see the car is not championship material yet. It's not fast enough yet. The tyre wear's also not where I want it to be. Of course, I made the gamble of going on to ultras, and here you can see we actually tried to re-overtake Sainz if we can help it, maybe into the last chicane. He does some great work there. We go toe-to-toe in the middle of the chicane. He just about gets a better exit there, and we're just a tiny inch alongside him with my front wing. We're going to make a big dive to the inside of turn 1. Big lock-up though on the front left, and we make some contact with this Spaniard, and he's going to do some great defensive work into turn 2 and get it back onto the racing line. And so obviously I did make the gamble. I said that it was a gamble to go on ultra soft tyres at the end of this race, because I went 2 laps earlier than the default pit stop wanted me to, and so, you know, I paid the price of that gamble, but I had to go for it. Even getting away from that, the Red Bull and even the Renault Works car just appears to be a bit faster at the moment, this stage of the season, so we do have work to do, but at least there's going to be some good points compared to last race.
At the end of the race, we'll see you in Parc Fermé.
So another fantastic victory for Red Bull today. Anthony, what do you think made the difference here?
I feel like consistency was probably the key today. There's being quick, and then there's being quick lap after lap after lap. If you can do that, you can capitalise on other people's errors without making many of your own. And that's an approach that can push you a long way up the field.
So here come our winning drivers today, and what a race it was. There's been a big push at the factory lately to get these cars ready, and we can see the fruits of that labour today as Red Bull lift the winner's trophy.
So pretty crazy result there in Canada with an all Red Bull family podium with Gasly in second place and Hartley third. Toro Rosso is doing a crazy good one-stop with some good pace on super softs, and so we move, we remain in P3, but Verstappen moves to lead the championship, but we move further down in terms of points there, in terms of the points we have to Verstappen and also Ricciardo, who beat us today. Hulkenberg remains in P4, Gasly climbs up into P5 in a Toro Rosso, so he's doing really great for himself, considering the McLaren of Alonso there probably should be a lot higher up, considering the McLaren car still has the pure pace on paper, apparently, and in the Constructors' title, we are definitely got a bit of worrying issue here, because Red Bull consistently, both their drivers now are doing well. Obviously, Ricciardo got unlucky with 2 DNFs earlier in the season, but now both of them are scoring decent points to the point where now, if we have maybe 2 more races like this, they're going to be 100 points ahead of us, and that's just not a comfortable place to be if I want to try and win this championship for Ferrari. So, like I've been banging on now for the last 2 episodes, we do have work to do, and we just need to, get down to it, get stuck in. Toro Rosso move up into P4 ahead of Haas. McLaren, at this stage of the season, they're down in P7. What on earth is going on with them? They have a car that can win a Grand Prix. They have had good qualifying sessions, but in the races, they're just throwing away their good pace with bad strategies, it appears, because they are nowhere in this race after the pit stop phases, with Alonso getting stuck in traffic ever since the first pit stop, and so they're going to really need to look at themselves in the mirror and see what's wrong with them, but obviously I can't talk too much. Raikkonen DNF, and me only P7. We've had 2 DNFs in the last 3 races, and we've had 1 no points finish in the last 3 episodes, so it's just not good enough as a team, and the performances need to get better very, very quickly. And so in lieu of the tyre wear issues we've been having, I'm going to go for an ultimate tyre upgrade, which is going to come in later in the season, of course, but when it does come in, it's going to be a pretty major factor for helping us, because the car, it really just does not have a lot of race pace. Like I said at the very start of this episode, very much unlike the first 3 seasons, this Ferrari car, I feel, is faster on 1 lap pace in qualifying, and it gets slower in the race. It's almost like 2011 in a way, 2011 Ferrari, where they used to be fast at the very start of a Grand Prix, then got slower as they went on through the race. We appear to kind of almost have that, because at the very start of this Canadian Grand Prix, I felt pretty fast, but then we just got slower and slower through the Grand Prix. So I kind of related to kind of maybe that kind of season for Ferrari. Bit of a weird one, so hopefully that tyre upgrade can help us. Obviously that's a big spend, so we don't have too much else to spend on any other upgrades. We have to wait for more resource points to come in next episode. So this mid part of the season, the rest of the European season, it's going to be real crucial and real important that we make sure we really keep on top of upgrades, because otherwise we are going to fall behind and we're not going to be in this championship fight. But obviously the fact that we have to do all that is going to make this season very interesting for you guys to watch. It's not going to be a whitewash case like it was with McLaren, where it's just going to be us 2 out in front, me and Kimi. We are going to have to really fight for this championship if we want it, in terms of R&D and also on track itself, and try and break this curse of the Ferrari car, it seems, in real life and in the game. So guys, if you did enjoy it, hit that like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you're new around, you can subscribe for weekly full-on content. I've been aarava. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.